Coaches, are you ready to revolutionize your game preparation? For the past 5 seasons, coaches across the nation have been using the ultimate scout team game changer, the Coachpad. Imagine this: no more scrambling on weekends to prep scout cards, no more fumbling with paper and binders. Whether you're drawing your cards digitally with a computer program or sketching them by hand, the Coachpad is your all in one solution. Picture yourself on the practice field effortlessly managing your scout team or standing on the sidelines during game day, syncing adjustments from the press box to your coaches on the sideline and back. With the coach pad, you can clearly see your scout cards even in the brightest sunlight. No more squinting or dealing with the wind blowing clear vinyl sleeves everywhere. This offseason, take your coaching to the next level. Get your coach pad today at thecoachpad.com and gear up for a winning season ahead.
Welcome back to another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Today we have Coach Hicks. He is the defensive coordinator at Ben Franklin out there in the great state of Maryland. Coach, how are you doing?
I'm well. I'm well. How are you?
Doing good, Coach. It's been good to talk to you for this little bit before we got started. And like I said, both our seasons are over. College football didn't really have. At least I didn't see anything major yesterday. So that's an uneventful weekend. So I get, in theory, that's good. So, but I mean, before we get started, how did you end up being the DC there at Ben Franklin? How did you make your way over there?
Yes, sir. So originally I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. So I grew up in the city, and pretty much when I got a little older, closer to my 18th birthday, my mom ended up moving my family to York, Pennsylvania. So I've been in the Pennsylvania area for a while. I moved to Virginia for a little bit, and I did some coaching down there as well. But fast forward to 2013, 2023, last year, I was coaching at Thaddeus Stevens College pretty much in the off season. And then I ended up going back to college full time. So I had to figure out another route because, of course, coaching college ball while you in college is pretty much, that's a lot. So I had to pretty much just figure out a way to keep on coaching. So from there, I ended up going to Central York High School here in York, Pennsylvania. I'm still in York, Pennsylvania. Central York High School is the best football team in the entire area, pretty much one of the best teams in the state, one of the best programs in the state. So I was able to join Central York High School last year to be the safeties coach and the assistant defensive backs coach, and we had a pretty good season. We had a really excellent season overall, especially defensively. I think the previous year, Central's defense was giving up about 25 points, and I believe we got it down to about 8.6 last year. So we had a real good season. Then when the season was over, I just applied around a little bit. My first light went off in my head about coaching back in Maryland. I'm gonna say about 2022, and I just had a thought that maybe I'll get my first opportunity if I go back home, because I was trying to secure defensive coordinator positions out here in Pennsylvania the last few years, but I wasn't successful in doing that. For whatever reason, I didn't get hired. I just kept getting offers to be defensive back coaches, and that's my niche. That's what I do. So I knew I was great at that, but I just knew that I had a little bit more in me than being a great defensive backs coach. So I applied around in Maryland, and Benjamin Franklin head coach Frank Brown had reached out to me late last year, wanted to bring me in for an interview. I went in for an interview. I drove down, did the interview. It went well. Then I got a call about, I'm gonna say, a month and a half later that I ended up getting a position. So from there, I just got right to work. We started in March. I'm the head strength and conditioning coach as well. So we got started in March with the weightlifting program, and we just went from there.
Okay. Now, I mean, obviously, we've talked a little bit. You took over a defense that had struggled the year before. What was kind of the process of balancing, and we'll talk about the specifics of the defense here in a minute, but of balancing what you wanted to do, and then as you watch film and you got to meet the kids and observe the kids, modifying what you wanted to do to what your kids could do. Excuse me. And evaluating that process once you got hired.
Yes, yes. So I am the type of coach where when I apply for a job, I already kind of know all the ins and out of pretty much the players and the statistics. I'm a number guy. So to explain that a little deeper, the moment I got the interview for Benjamin Franklin, the moment Coach Frank called me, I got the phone with him. I immediately started doing research on the school. So I went and I found film on the school on my own. I automatically look up the best teams in the standings, the best teams in that conference, and get to comparing my defense to that offense so I could take all of that stuff in there with me for the interview. So I kind of already had an idea of what the players look like for the most part. I just didn't know names and faces, but I kind of already knew numbers and had them kind of, I don't want to say in the best place for them, but in the best place for them based off of me looking at their film. So then coach, like I said, I'm a numbers guy. So I broke down the numbers and I noticed that they gave up 44.7 points per game last season. So when I broke it down, it did match the film. When I looked at the film, I pretty much saw guys who would run through a wall, but they had bad techniques. Tackling techniques were poor. I'm gonna say some people were a little shy about contact. The angles were bad. The pursuit was bad. It was a challenge. I seen a lot of things that I had to work on. But one of the things that I learned from coaching at Central York the previous year under Coach Sess was the importance of tackling circuits. One of the things that I noticed there was pretty much every single practice we did a defensive practice. We had a tackling circuit that we had to do pretty much. So I learned that, and I definitely incorporated that this year. And pretty much every single defensive practice, even in the offseason, we were doing a tackling circuit. So pretty much the tackling circuit consists of 4 different drills, and they were different components of tackling. So, of course, the D-line would be together, the linebackers would be together, and I'll break the corners and the safeties down and just run the 4 groups. And we just worked on tackling, hit-up tackling, angle tackling. Another big thing for us was I believe in near shoulder tackling, coach. I like hawk tackling, but I teach near shoulder tackle just off the simple fact that the near shoulder tackle is a more impactful tackle. Pretty much you can get a little more power on that tackle once you learn how to properly do the technique pretty much for the most part. So I just drilled it in slow motion, of course. And the tackling circuit is a control thing. So it's all control movements. It's slow, it's teaching, it's teaching. And then from there I picked it up. And we pretty much like to do something that I got from the University of Miami I like to call it a funnel drill. Pretty much with 3 different levels. I'll have defensive linemen, linebackers in the secondary, of course, and they'll be going against offensive linemen and running backs. And every 5 yards, it's more space that's created. So the field gets wider and larger after every 5 yards, pretty much like a funnel. And we just went with that, tackling every single day, control tackling, defensive back drills. As far as defensive backs coach, I just had to teach those guys how to high point the football, and just pretty much just teach them angles. A big thing was team defense. I just got to do my job. I don't need you to be Superman. I just need you to do your role, understand your role, and do your role. And if everybody do their role, then we'll be an excellent team defense.
All right, coach. Now let's talk a little bit about the defense you put in, because I think you sent me a couple clips, but you called the 23 defense. Kind of let's start there. Like, what is the 23 defense before we kind of get into some of the other aspect? Like, let's at least get to the basics before we get into the deeper dive into it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So the 23 defense is a defense that I created. I've been working on this defense for a very long time, and this season was the first time I got to implement it at the varsity level, and it did wonders for me. It did wonders for me and the team, the program. So I started creating the 23 defense because I just understood my understanding of offenses from my years coaching youth football. I was an offensive coordinator. I was a head coach, OC, DC. So I kind of understand all the dynamics pretty much in the play calling and play design and the whole nine. So I just started thinking about defenses and getting caught in binds. So I wanted to create an innovative, fast defense that could adjust to any personnel, and I never get caught in any binds, never have any conflict players or anything like that. So I pretty much just started studying the greats pretty much, and everybody have their own opinion of greats, but my greats are like Buddy Ryan and Jim Johnson, and I'm a huge Nick Saban fan, Bill Belichick. Those are my guys, Mike Zimmer. So I pretty much just took some things from my favorite defensive minds and collectively just add it all together, then put my little pieces on it to make it like the glue to make it all work. So when I say I took a little bit from everything, I'll start with my guy Buddy Ryan. With Buddy Ryan with the 46 defense, I just love the fact that it was innovative and it was aggressive. And my favorite thing about it was that you had to adjust to that defense. The defense really didn't have to adjust. The defense didn't have to adjust to you at all. You had to adjust to that defense until I guess they quote unquote found a way to break it. Let's go to Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick is one of my favorite guys because the way he game plan, and I love his two-gapping scheme. So I pretty much I took his two-gapping scheme, defensive lineman two-gapping scheme, and ran with it. Pretty much. And of course, you guys know what two-gapping is. Responsible for two gaps. So instead of one gapping and stunting and all those things, he's responsible for two gaps. So we just play the four technique and play head up and let him read and react for the most part. Nick Saban is my favorite defensive coach of all time, and definitely my favorite when it comes to secondary play. So from Nick Saban, I learned about pretty much just two high safeties, starting in two high, pre-snap looks, and then coverage disguises. Pretty much, I'll show you a two high. You'll look like you got something pre-snap, and of course, I set the trap for you. I made it look like you had something pre-snap, but by the time you snap the ball, it's not anything what it looked like. It's not what you thought it was, and 9 times out of 10 end up being a good situation for us, a great situation for us. Jim Johnson, I learned, and I started doing it pretty much just double A gap pressures, pretty much showing double A gap looks, giving double A gap pressure, just pretty much just putting pressure on offenses, and another way of making them adjust to me. And my last one, Mike Zimmer. Mike Zimmer, I utilized and I learned about blitz peeling. So I use multiple blitz peel defenders depending on the play, pretty much. And you guys know blitz peel pretty much means I have a player that's responsible for blitzing, and if the running back swings out for a pass, then he covers the running back. The running back stays in the block, then he attacks the backfield and make the plays.
All right, Coach. Now I do want to talk about it because I know looking at the clips, okay, especially when you mention the words Mike Zimmer and Buddy Ryan, you automatically think of aggressiveness, obviously.
Yes, sir.
So obviously there is an aggressive component with it. But like my first real actual question behind that is, what are kind of the base coverages you put behind it? Because again, the general way anytime somebody blitzes is automatically go man. But is that the only thing you're doing? What are coverage like? And again, I don't need every detail of your coverages, but like just generally, like what are you doing behind it? Especially when you are, I mean, you do when you're a 5-man box a lot of the times against a 2x2 team. What are you doing behind it to keep everything in front of you and do what you need to do?
Yes, sir. So without giving out too much right away, my base defense is a cover one invert. Pretty much that's something I learned from Nick Saban. So we start in too high, and off the QB's cadence, we'll always rotate. So depending on the ripper is call, I have 2 free safeties at the top. So I'll go a little deeper into it. We have 3 defensive linemen, a nose guard, 2 defensive ends. We have 2 linebackers, a Mike and Jack in the middle. And then I have 4 safeties. So I have 2 strong safeties, 1 in each apex. And then I have 2 free safeties over the top. I call one the free safety and one the star. And of course, we have 2 corners. So pretty much we always start in the 2 high look pre-snap off the QB cadence. We'll rotate to whatever we're doing. My main coverage, my base coverage is a cover 1 invert. So based off the Ripper Liz call, the free safety or the star will be inverting down to cover the slot, the tight end, the wing back, depending on the offensive formation. The other coverage that I like to run is cover 2 man under. So let's say it's an obvious passing situation. Of course, it's better for the defense if I know you're going to throw the ball and I'm playing man-to-man with 2 safeties over the top. I'm pretty much forcing you to throw that thing in double coverage. And when we get a little deeper later on, I'll start talking about leverages and all the little things that make it work. But that's pretty much the idea of it. If I know you're going to throw the ball, coach, I'm going to have two safeties over the top, 2 really good safeties over the top. We playing man-to-man. And 9 times out of 10, the QB is going to throw that thing in double coverage. And that's exactly what I want.
Okay. Now, again, I mentioned the blitzing part, and again, there's at the high school level. There's 2 real philosophies. It is the bend, like at least I say. I mean, there's probably more, but I categorize people into the 2 philosophies. Is you have the blitz heavy teams who are very pressure oriented, and then you have the bend don't break people who don't blitz very often, keep everything in front of them, and are waiting for the offense to make a mistake, which both philosophies work very well if depending on how your kids are coached. Obviously, with what we've already talked about, you're in the more blitz heavy section. But how many, I mean, my real question is, because I always like to talk to coaches who blitz, because I never blitzed a lot when I was a DC, is how many blitzes are you carrying into a game? Like, I mean, obviously, technically everything in your repertoire is there, but like the stuff you focused on for the week, what are you carrying? Like how much, and then how much do you modify, or how much does your focus change week to week?
Yes, sir. That's a very good question. So one of my favorite things about the 23 defense, and one of the things that I made sure I put in when I was creating this defense is a lot of built-in calls. So we have built-in blitzes based off of the formation, based off of the play call, the strength side, the Ripper Liz. So it's a lot of things that go into it. So pretty much I would say built-in blitzes, we have at least, it can be, if I had to explain it, the better way for me to explain it, coach would say, we have built-in blitzes where we can end up sending from 3 to 7. So it could be, sometimes it could be 7. It'll be 7 with a safety in the box. Sometimes we can send 3, just depending on the situation and pretty much the formation they come out in, and just the situation will play a call and the feel I got for what's going on. But every single play, 3 to 7 is coming. And pretty much as far as game planning, of course, if we're going against a team that's a 31 personnel team or a 32 personnel team that's run heavy, then I'm going to send my linebackers, I'm going to send them a lot more than I would send them if I was playing against a spread 10 personnel team or trips team or an empty team. And I wouldn't send my middle linebacker, my Mike and my Jack as much, but I would send them depending on the situation.
Okay. Now, I mean, I'm also curious, like, because again, every area is different, and I've learned this. I mean, even just from Eastern and Western Ohio, the type of football you get is drastically different. What kind of things are you seeing out there right now? Not just against you, just in general. Like, because I'm always curious of trends, fads, on offense, or really on both sides of the ball. But like, obviously, you mostly focus on opposing offenses. What are you kind of seeing? How are people? Are they staying in their base stuff against you? Are you getting some weird dumb stuff? And then on top of that, are you just seeing a lot of 10 personnel, 2x2, 3x1 stuff? Are you seeing a lot of the 11 personnel stuff? Heck, for all I know, your league could just be all wing T for all I know. But what are you kind of seeing out there? And then are they changing anything for your defense? So kind of a 2-part question there.
Yes, I'm mostly seeing this year in Maryland and even in Pennsylvania, it's really run heavy. So this past season, maybe I'll say I saw maybe 31 personnel the most, a lot of the 31, 32. I saw a bunch of unbalanced, a lot of 10 personnel, but not as much. Maybe out of the entire season, maybe 2 to 3 teams were like spread based. Pretty much, even the spread based teams, they still did a little bit of like 32 personnel. They had they moments where they did some unbalanced stuff as well. But 2 or 3 teams were spread heavy and had some run heavy formations, and the rest of the teams were run heavy teams, and they had a little bit of spread formations. But for the most part, in my opinion, a lot of our success came because, when I explain the defense, like I said, we have 5 in the box with 2 apex strong safeties, and we bring a free safety down. But a lot of that stuff is after the QB's cadence. So pre-snap, teams feel like they got the numbers to run the ball on it. So we've been seeing, if a team come out in 32 personnel, initially it looked like they about to punch us in the mouth. But once the QB started his cadence and we get them moving around, then it put us at an advantage. So pretty much teams felt like initially, I know I definitely can tell from watching film that they felt like they were going to be able to run the ball down our throats the entire game. So that kind of worked out in our advantage for the most part. I felt like that helped the defense because we kind of knew what we were going to get for the most part.
Okay. Now, I mean, you've mentioned a lot. I'm always curious about this because I think there's 2 ways to do it. And because you talk a lot about disguising looks, and again, I'll rephrase that. It's 2 ways from a high school perspective. Because again, colleges, again, you have a lot more 100%. We're one way. You got more time with kids, blah, blah, meetings. Whereas high school level, again, depending on the year, you might be 1 platoon one year, 2 platoon the other, depending on their size and what again, a lot of different factors. But you talk about disguising. Is all that, because you talked about, is all the disguising built into what you're already doing? Or do you have certain calls or signals to say, hey, this one we're disguising or disguising this way? How are you putting in, as part of the structure of your defense, how are you putting in the disguising with your kids?
The disguise is built in, so it's day one. So the first thing when I teach alignments, one of the first things I do install is alignments. I'll get up on the big chalkboard, and that's one of the first things I put in is a disguise. I let them know that the disguise is important. It's one of the best things about the defense because it lets the offense feel like they have an advantage on us. Pre-snap, they will see the alignment. They'll see 2 high safeties. Like, I'll give you a quick example. Let's say it's 21 personnel, where it's 2 backs, a tight end. Let's say I formation. I formation, it's a tight end, 2 receivers on each side. Initially, we in 2 high, and I got an apex strong safety blitzing, showing blitz pretty much outside of that tight end. So if you think about that alignment, it looked like you about to punch us in the mouth. It looked like you about to run right off tackle because a pre-snap, there's nobody over top of the tight end. There's nobody. So it looked like that C gap is 1,000% there. As soon as the QB starts his cadence, the rotation come down. So it's rip a Liz. If you're on the right, is rip. If you're on the left, is Liz. Of course, the free safety come down. Then he come down about 5 yards outside leverage on that tight end. And he responsible to cover that tight end if it's a pass, outside leverage, and his C gap responsibility versus the run. So, and that strong safety is blitzing. So with me saying that right there, we already done mess with your brain because initially nobody was over that tight end pre-snap, but post-snap, when you snap that ball, we got somebody blitzing outside the tight end. We got somebody coming down. We got somebody already head up on the tight end. And then we got a DN that's attacking the inside of the tight end and then B gap. So we kind of play right into our strengths. And our linebackers are free hitters. So the linebackers are expected to get there. And most times they end up getting there anyway.
Yeah. Now the last little curious question I have is, again, you put this in, and I think there's usually when you just put stuff in, most coaches are like, yeah, good. But depending on the culture of the program or coaches who've done certain things for certain long, there's occasionally pushback when you get something new, like a new type of defense, new type of offense, new techniques. It just is what it is. Like, again, there's a variety of factors for it: doubt, tradition, comfort. How much convincing of your head coach and of other staff members? How did you create buy-in with what you wanted to do? Obviously, you guys have had some success with it because you cut your points per game pretty much in half, and you guys had a pretty dang good season this year overall. Obviously didn't end the way you wanted to, but let's be honest, unless we're holding a trophy at the end of the year, it's not going well for a lot of us. So, kind of, I mean, how did you create staff and player buy-in to what you wanted to do when you brought this in?
This is a very good question, Coach. This is a very good question. Initially, well, I'll be honest, it was very rough getting everybody to buy into the system from day one. When I interviewed with Coach Frank, he told me from the beginning, this is one of my favorite things about Coach Frank. He's straightforward. He's a straight shooter. He's going to tell you straight how he feel. He's not pulling no punches, and it don't matter who it is. When I first met him at the interview, the interview was at his house. We was explaining the defense, and I was going over the defense, and Coach Frank said to me, son, look, I don't believe in your scheme right now, but I'm gonna give you a chance. So I can't get at Coach Frank at all for that because he said it from the beginning. So I had to prove it to Coach Frank from the go, from pretty much most of the season that it would work. So with that being said, of course, I had a assistant defensive coordinator who got hired when I got hired, but he's from a different scheme. He's from a 4-2-5 scheme. The head coach, Coach Frank, was the defensive coordinator last year. He's a 4-3 guy. So we got a 4-3 guy, we got a 4-2-5 guy, and then we got me a 23 defense guy. So pretty much I had to just try to sell them on the dream. Before the season started, the assistant defensive coordinator ended up resigning for whatever reason. And I still had some convincing to do. It was a lot of questions pretty much from the other coaching staffs, just little stuff. But in my mind, I knew what I knew. I came from something extremely successful. I knew the defense was going to work. I ran it in the spring for a travel youth team that I was coaching for, and we gave up 3 points a game. So I knew running this exact same way, a 12U team. So I knew, and we had a talented team, but we was playing against talent too. So I just knew that it would work pretty much. So I just stuck to my guns, Coach. I just stuck to my guns. I don't want to say I was being stubborn, but I was a little stubborn. I just pretty much just stuck to what I knew, and I knew the defense would work. And once we got to about week 2 or 3, I'm gonna say about week 3, then I could feel everybody start to believe a little more. The players, I could feel the assistant coaches starting to believe a little more. I could feel Coach Frank starting to believe a little more. And then when we got to, I'm gonna say about week 6 or so, that's when I really felt that they believe. When we started just breaking down numbers based off of teams that they were playing last year before I got here. Like, for example, it was a team that we lost to week 1 of the season, like week 1 this season and week 1 last year. They played a team, they lost to that team 46-12. We played them this year, we lost 8-6. So it was like stuff like that. Like we would compare scores from last year. Last year they beat us by 40. Even though we lost to them this year, we lost by 6. So just thinking about stuff like that, I started to gain their trust. Then pretty much they started to believe in the scheme more, and just turned into the strength of the team eventually down the line. But I just stuck to my guns, Coach, and just stuck to what I knew. And in the end, I was right, so to speak.
Perfect, Coach. Now, coaches, if you want to learn more or talk to Coach, contact details will be in the bio, as usual. Like, share, subscribe, all that lovely jazz. Again, all that stuff helps, especially is what YouTube and Spotify tell me, the likes part. Check out our sponsor, Coachpad. I'm probably forgetting something as I do my exit, but oh well. Coach, thank you. And coaches, again, like, share, subscribe, and check Coach out.